Hello, I'm Luca Coasters, and today I'll be reviewing Taiga at Linnanmäki. Taiga is an Intamin LSM launch coaster which opened back in 2019, and since then it has been one of the most sought after coasters for enthusiasts. I was fortunate enough to ride Taiga in August 2021, securing a total of 54 rides in it, giving me a great feel for the ride. To start off, I have to mention the setting of this ride. The ride is mostly located on the side of a hill, giving it some incredible terrain interaction, and the rest is just crossing over the other rides in the park. So when building this coaster, the park was very limited with the footprint they have, resulting in a really compact ride. The ride features a bit of theming in the queue line, with some lights and cutouts, but overall it doesn't have much. Once you reach a station, you can actually choose your row, and there is another line for the front row which is slightly longer. The trains for Taiga actually look really nice, with the Zero car having a bird head on it, which looks great honestly. The trains themselves are the standard Intamin LSM launch coaster trains, like the ones featured on Taran or Velocicoaster, but these trains have 8 rows. The front rows of each car were slightly cramped, but the back rows are actually really open. The restraints are just the standard Intamin over-the-head lap bars and are incredibly comfortable and open. These are currently my favourite coaster restraints because of how open they are and how much freedom they allow, and they really enhance the ride experience on Taiga for me. Once the ride dispatches, the train slowly cruises forward until the front car is halfway along the launch track, where the train suddenly accelerates in a surprisingly snappy launch. While it doesn't launch you too fast, the acceleration is great and it pins you to the back of your seat. The train then pulls up, giving solid positives before twisting into the first inversion, a 0G winder, but this inversion actually has very unusual shaping for a 0G winder. It starts off almost as an outward bank turn, before twisting upside down after it crests the top of the inversion. In the front row, the entrance to this 0G winder gives ejector, which then transitions into hang time as the train inverts. However, in the back row it just gives floater, which seamlessly becomes hang time. As the train twists so slowly, you also get some lateral hang time which throws you to the right, so you are suspended for around a second before being thrown to the left as the train continues twisting. Overall, this inversion is easily one of my favourites. It twists through it fast enough so that the hang time is comfortable, and the variety of forces makes it extremely fun and actually quite aggressive. Upon exiting the inversion, the train enters a decently intense valley, just before rising up and banking to the left. Unfortunately, this transition isn't the most whippy and lacks laterals, but it provides a nice pop of flow to entering it. The train then dives down and navigates an incredibly intense right-hand turn. This moment of positives is also so sustained, and the fact that you just keep on getting faster because of the train is incredible. On a couple of my rides, I even came close to greying out on this turn, making it probably the best moment of positives on the ride. Unfortunately, on this element, the rattle the ride has becomes evident, and whilst it isn't awful, it definitely becomes uncomfortable when marathoning it. The train then rises up, sustaining the positives before dipping down and banking to the left. The train then turns out to the left, giving decent positives, but at this time the train is also shaking a decent amount. The train then banks to the right and navigates another flat turn, and towards the end of this turn, the train shakes quite violently, which isn't helped by the weird unbanked transition into the second launch. The second launch itself is solid. The sensation of speed is great, but the acceleration isn't too strong. The train then rises up into the top hat, giving a quick burst of strong positives. This top hat is really weirdly shaped, as it has to rise above Tulareki and Pikajuna, so the ascent and descent are not too steep, and the descent is actually smaller than the ascent going up. In the front row, you get a pop of floater entering the top hat, but it isn't too sustained, and then on the descent there is very little airtime in the front. In the back row, you get some weak floater going up the top hat, which builds up into strong floater, bordering on ejector as it crests and then descends. But unfortunately, this is not the most sustained airtime. The descent also actually provides decent laterals in the back row, which pushes you to the left as you descend, making the element that bit more wild. The train then exits the top hat and enters the valley with solid positives, but they aren't too strong, before rising up into the 0G stall. The train whips to the right, giving some great airtime in every row entering the inversion, especially when sitting on the right side of the train. The transition into the stall is not the whippiest, however the airtime it delivers definitely makes up for that. You are then suspended for a couple seconds during the stall. In the first half it delivers around 0G, before very mild positives in the second half as the train descends down the hill while twisting out of the stall. The base of this valley gives great positives which are interrupted by an extremely strong speed hill. This speed hill gives a brief but violent and strong pop of ejector in every single row, which feels like the strongest moment of airtime on the entire ride. The juxtaposition in force from the intense valley to the strong air, then back to the strong positives whilst rising up is insane, and makes the hill feel even more aggressive. Taiga then enters a massive Immelman, which gives great positives at the base, but as you actually invert, the positives get weaker, but not weak enough so that it gives hang time. So you're just kind of held in your seat whilst being inverted, and it doesn't really do much. The ride then slowly twists out of the Immelman into another turn, but overall this inversion is probably the weakest on the ride, and it is definitely a dead spot relative to the rest of the insane elements in this coaster. After twisting out, the ride enters another intense left-hand turn, before rising up into a twisted hill. On this hill, in every row, you are launched out of your seat and thrown to the left in an incredible pop of ejector combined with insane laterals. This hill is just so aggressive, especially in the back as you are dragged over the hill, but the train flies over this hill in every single row. The airtime may be brief, but the strength and laterals make up for it. For comparison, this hill feels like the first twisted hill in Taron's second half, except on Taiga the air is much stronger, which is traded off for slightly weaker laterals. I absolutely love this element as it's so aggressive and just throws you around, and is really one of my favourite elements on the entire ride. Before you can recover, the ride slams you with another intense 180-degree rising turn, which provides great positives but not quite enough to make you grey out. At the top of these turns, the train banks to the left, and then to the right in a fairly forgettable transition. Then the train twists back to the left whilst diving down the hill. In the front row, this dive down gives decent laterals and a nice pop of floater, but in the back you are absolutely whipped to the side whilst being ejected out of your seat. This element actually feels very similar to the prior twisted hill, except it is all downhill. So I'd say the forces are slightly weaker, but the transition into the airtime is even more aggressive and the airtime is slightly more sustained, making it yet another crazy element on this coaster, which perfectly combines airtime and laterals, whilst also utilising the terrain amazingly. You are then slammed into your seat again with great positives as the train navigates a turn before rising up into another airtime hill. When entering this hill you get strong floater, and when the train crests a hill it actually whips to the left, giving solid laterals which throw you to the right. This is definitely the most sustained moment of airtime on the ride, but it definitely feels like it could have been a bit stronger. In every row you do get great airtime, ranging from strong floater in the back to some weak ejector in the front actually, and the laterals are decent, but it just doesn't quite compare to the prior element or the twisted hill earlier in the ride. But it still manages to throw you around a bit, and how sustained the airtime is as well is great. The ride then twists into one final inversion, and it goes through it pretty fast while still giving good hang time, which again is very comfortable. The train then quickly goes through one right hand turn before rising into the brake run. The entrance into the brakes gives one final pop of ejector in every row to conclude the ride, before being slammed forward as the train decelerates. So overall, Taiga is incredible. It has great forces and a massive variety of forces and elements, and the train interaction just makes it even better. I would say that there are definitely a few dead spots, and the first half could have been a lot better if it had at least one snappy transition or conventional airtime moment. Also, the top hat and Immelman did not deliver as well as they could have, but it is understandable why because of the space limitation. The ride also felt like it could have done with a real sustained ejector moment, but that would have been really hard to fit into the layout. Other than that, Taiga is amazing and easily one of the best multi-launch coasters in the world, and one of Europe's best roller coasters. Overall, I'll have to give Taiga a very high score of 94 out of 100. It is definitely worth getting out to Helsinki to ride this unique launch coaster, and I can definitely see why so many people love it. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this.